Alright, welcome back everybody. Hey, have you ever done your own wheel alignment? Yeah, me either. Let's see how that works out for me. Alright. As I mentioned in my last video, one of the last things I have to do is the ashtray here. And I've started to clean it up a little bit. I'm going to have to take this door off. Now you can still buy these reproduction. I'd rather just get this one cleaned up. I have one from Dorothy and one from the black car, and both of them, there's this little clip inside here, if you can see that, and I think it was just a clip to hold it open while you were moving down the road. Well, I don't intend to really worry about that. I'm just going to try to drill the rivets out here to get this little door off, and then try to clean it up as best as I can. Get this door off, get it cleaned up, get it painted in wrinkle coat, as good of a job as I can do anyway. Another thing I need to do is, now that the car is essentially fully loaded, I'm going to go ahead and tighten up all the suspension joints. So pretty much everything that was a rotating joint or a pivoting joint or something like that, I left relatively loose. So there's some things I tighten, like the upper ball joints, I tighten those, the tie rod stuff, the steering obviously, because I didn't want to lose steering when I was going out there. But like these bolts here, that the A-arms rotate on, and in the bottom there, I didn't tighten them all the way down. They are lock nutted, or excuse me, nylock nuts, so I didn't expect them to work their way out. I wasn't afraid for the safety there. But now I'm just going to go around and double check everything. And the rear suspension, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that yet without getting under the car, which is fine, obviously. But I would like to tighten it with the wheels on the ground, and I'm not sure that I'm going to have the room to do that. But there's a lot less moving parts back there too, so we'll see how that goes. So I got the torque table here. I'm just going to go ahead. I'm not going to film this. It's just me tightening some bolts, but I'm just going to go ahead and methodically make my way around the car to take care of that stuff. Well, as embarrassed as I am to say it, I got the rear quarter bumpers on. I guess it was just a matter of putting stuff in the right order. The spacing is good. I'm happy with that. It doesn't come too close to the car. And where I was having problems with these parts being crooked down here and it not laying good, well, it does now. So I'm sticking with my original answer of not going this route originally and going with chrome, but it fits, so it does make me happy in a way that I didn't lose $1,000. As with many of my videos, this is not an instructional video. This is a how I did it video. So please, I don't even know if what I'm going to do is going to work, and the stuff that I've bought to try to make it work. So don't, I'm going and filming this as I go, so I may totally change my mind and come to the end like I've done so many times with restoration here that don't do it this way, go try something else. The problem with the older cars like this is a lot of people nowadays don't have the experience on the old alignments and also the alignment racks that they use in the computer controlled stuff. Dorothy, frankly, is probably too small just to fit up on those racks for the vast majority of the places that you may take it. I'm sure I could find some old school guys around here that know how to do stuff, but in the absence of looking for that, I've decided to take it upon myself. So there's 3 major areas of alignment that you need to worry about when you're aligning your car: caster, camber, and toe. So the first one we'll talk about is caster. So caster is not as much of an alignment of the tire as it is alignment of the car, if you kind of catch my drift. So imagine that this is the tire that's on the car, the front tire, and caster I'm going to represent by this pole here. So essentially what the caster is, it's a steering angle that the car, as the tire mounts up. So to have a 0 caster, the steering pivot would be straight up and down like this. Positive caster is towards the back of the car. A negative caster is towards the front of the car. What you want is you want a positive caster on your automobile. And what that does is the steering angle comes down through the center of the tire at an angle. And what happens is the frictional forces of the tire the tire wants to push itself forward because you've got this angle with the force coming down like this, trying to run the tire forward. But the contact patch of the tire is in the center on the road. And what that provides is the tendency for your steering wheel to come back and center up the car, because the steering angle actually is way out in front of the tire. If you drew that straight line this way, the tire wants to tend to go straight as you let go of the wheel. So if you're in the middle of a turn, you let go of the steering wheel, you can see the steering wheel kind of comes back to center all by itself. That's because of the caster. And that's probably the most difficult one to envision, explain, and kind of wrap your head around. Next thing we'll talk about is camber. Camber is the measure of the tire as it tilts, kind of like this. So if you imagine that the inside of the car is here, if the tire tilts towards the inside of the car, that's negative camber. If the tire tilts towards the outside of the car, that's positive camber. The reason for camber is so that your tire maintains a better contact patch with the road while you're going around a turn. So if you can imagine you turn the wheel, you've got obviously both sides of the car. The friction of the tire contacting the road and the fact that the centrifugal force is going to tend to push the car towards the outside of the curb is going to cause the tire to kind of turn a little bit. And what the camber does is it tries to counteract that, so to provide a good contact patch between the tire on the road when you're in the middle of the curve. When the car is going straight down the road, you can have that slight tilt. You're not as concerned because you're not really concerned with the amount of grip that you have when you're going straight. You're more concerned with the amount of grip that you have when you're turning the car. So that camber will tend to maintain a flatter contact patch and a wider contact patch between the tire and the road. The last thing we'll talk about is toe, and toe is probably the easiest one to explain. And toe is essentially the tilt of the tire, as almost like if you're grabbing the steering wheel and turning it in or out. And what the toe does is it tends to put the car down a straight line on the road when you let go of the steering wheel. So if you're moving down the road, down the highway, and you let go of the steering wheel and the car continues to track straight and it doesn't pull to one side or the other, that primarily is your toe. So the toe, at least on most cars, is usually tilted in, and that tends to, those two tires tilted in try to counteract each other to keep the car going straight down the road. If you had the toe out, the two tires would fight each other, and if you had one just a little bit slightly off, that one's going to kind of win, and you're going to tend to veer off to that side. So when you have them both pointing to the same line, they would tend, even if they're off a little bit, they'll tend to try to go straighter a little bit easier. Toe is the easiest one, again, to explain. It's the easiest one to set. That's just a tie rod thing. So we'll go into showing you on Dorothy here and what Dorothy's adjustments are with respect to caster and camber and toe, and how I intend to approach doing this. Looking down on the front wheel here, and I'm trying to center up the frame as best I can, and I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it, but this is the top steering knuckle, and at the bottom down here there's the other one. And if you were to look straight down, again, it's easier to see here. I'll show it to you like this. If you can imagine a straight line straight down the tire, you would expect that this point here, the center of that point, lines up with the center of that guy, the trunnion down here, right here. But if you look, and I'm trying to get this without, you're going to have to kind of take my word for it. But if you can see, the top portion where the ball joint is kind of a little bit further back from the car, back towards the rear of the car, than the trunnion is. So that's the caster. So you can see that it leans towards the back of the car just a little bit. The Spitfire doesn't have a real extreme caster, but again, that's what tends to drive the car straight. Now there's not a whole lot of adjustment for caster for the Spitfire. However, there are shims, which I'll show you here in a second, that you can use to help you adjust caster a little bit. I'm hoping that I don't have to play with caster at all. As far as camber goes, if you remember, it's the tilt of the wheel into or out of the car. Now there's an upper A-arm and a lower A-arm. You could either push the upper A-arm out, draw the lower A-arm in, or some combination thereof to adjust the the camber. However, for the Spitfire, there is no upper A-arm adjustment. That thing's just bolted in. But in the lower A-arm, I'll zoom in here and show you. Lower A-arm, you can see those stacks. Those are shims. So real high-tech solution there. And essentially all it does was shim the lower A-arm and either push it in or push it out. So if you look there, I think there's 3 shims, it looks like. And on the back, there's also shims. Right in the back there, you can see there's also 3 shims there. So what you're doing there is you're either adding or removing shims to bring the bottom of the tire in or out from the car as necessary for your measurements. Now what you can also do is you can remove shims from either the front or the back, and not both, and that'll tend to tilt that bottom A-arm a little bit, and that'll help you with your caster a little bit. The final one is toe, and toe is adjusted with the tie rods. That's pretty easy to do. I showed you that in a previous video, how I was just dead eyeballing it. And essentially you've got your tie rod here, you've got a little lock nut here, you loosen that lock nut, you loosen this little clamp that goes into the boot here, and you can spin this shaft here, and it either draws the tire in or draws the tire out depending on which way you're spinning it, and that causes the tire to tilt in or out like you're driving it. So there's a whole bunch of measurements to do here, and these are I don't obviously have a a high-tech solution to any of this stuff, so it's going to be interesting and see how I can make it work. What I have here is 2 sheets of tile, floor tile, like that old stuff that used to have asbestos in it, and I have essentially this is the same degree wheel that I used when I was doing my cam timing to give me 0 through 90 degrees. And what I'm going to do is this is going to sit on the floor, and then I've cut out a piece that's like a pointer, if you can see that, and then the tire is going to roll over top of this down this center line, and then what I'll be able to do is turn the steering wheel and see how many degrees the steering wheel is turned. Now, why am I doing this? I'm not real sure, to tell you the truth, but I do know that there's a spec on the steering wheel alignment or the steering rack alignment that when you're at 20 degrees in one direction, you're supposed to be at 20 degrees on the other one. That's when the locks are even, because the wheels are set up to not turn at essentially the same rate, if you kind of understand. So when you go into a turn, the outside wheel will turn at a slightly shallower angle than the inside wheel, because the outside wheel has more distance to cover. For the Spitfire specifically, when you're at 20 degrees on a turn on one side, you'll be at 20 degrees on the other side, and then inside of that and outside of that, the ratio is not equal. So that, if nothing else, will allow me to check that and verify that. What I'm also going to do is just to provide, there's like a smooth side to this stuff and a rough side to this stuff. So where I want the tire to land, or where I want it to be on the floor, is on the rough side, and then the smoother side is on the other side. What I'm also going to do is use a little bit of the gear oil just to kind of lubricate that up. Now that's just Sharpie on here, and I did put the gear oil on there and kind of rub it in and try to make sure that the gear oil would not take up the Sharpie, and it didn't. So we're going to go ahead and get these set up and see what they look like and how it works, and who knows, this may be a waste. Got the plates down there, and all I did was use that center line that I marked on them, and the treads on the tire are convenient that you've got like a center tread there, so I was able to line the wheel up on that. You also can see that there's red oil. I ended up using Marvel Mystery Oil because the gear oil was a little too thick, and it just felt like it wasn't. It felt like it was gripping more than it was allowing to slide. So that Marvel Mystery Oil is nice and light. I don't know how accurate this is going to be. I'm just kind of eyeballing it, but I'm going to go ahead and start to turn the wheel here. I expect it to turn pretty good and get me the 20 degrees, and then I'll run over to the other side and check. Both sides came back to 0, pretty much right down the middle, so that gives me confidence that the measurements are accurate and that this thing is not slipping as the wheel turns or anything like that. So we're going to pull out the workshop manual here, take a look real quick and show you how the workshop manual has this dual alignment, and then we're going to see if we can modify that in some way, shape, or form to allow me to do my own. So here's the specs. Looking at toe in, front and rear, static laden, it says. I'll explain that here in a second. 0 to a 1/16 of an inch, so that the toe in is very minor, if at all. Spitfire camber angle, 2 degrees positive on the front, but 3 degrees negative on the rear. And we don't have much of a choice of that. I'll show you that in a second. And then the caster angle, it's not specified for both. So the caster angle here, we're looking at 4 degrees positive. So now I got to keep all my casters and my cambers and all that stuff straight in my head, and we'll go ahead and see if we can't check it. So here's the procedure for measuring the caster and the camber. And essentially what it has you do is it's got this superlaminine level thing going on here, and it has you turn the wheel 20 degrees to the back lock as opposed to the front lock, so it's just one direction, I guess. I got to figure that out. So turn the wheel 20 degree back lock and 0 the bubble on this thing, then turn it 20 degrees to the other side and measure the bubble off, and then that essentially you're going to repeat that until you're any differences and everything kind of equalize the differences, and that's going to give you your caster and camber angle, specifically your caster angle, to go ahead and try to figure out what these are. So this is all there is for the measurement, and then into the adjustment you get quite a bit here, and I showed you the shims and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and digest this for a little bit and see if I can't translate this into something that I have laying around here to try to make this work. Well, kind of hate to waste the time here and your time by watching that, but I'm not confident that I understand the caster and camber angles and how I did it right there and what information I got from that. So I didn't really change. I did keep track of the spacers. I didn't really change any of the hardware for the suspension, so I don't expect the caster and the camber to be off, but I am getting different results, or especially the caster. Camber maybe. I am getting different results, passenger side and driver side, but again, I'm not positive that I know what I'm doing enough to go ahead and pull shims and put shims in and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to leave it for now and study a little bit more and try to pick this up in the next video. One thing I am more confident in, however, is doing the toe. So I'll show you how I'm going to set up a toe box so that I can get the measurements on the toe and then be able to adjust the toe. Trying to set the strings up here, you have to go off of the rear and the front track and account for any differences, and with the Spitfire there is some differences. I'll show you the book here real quick. So you've got this nice picture of the front end of the Spitfire, and you can see that you've got point V there from the center of the tires and point V down here from the center of the tires. There's the V line, trace that across. It's 4 feet 1 inch or 124.46 centimeters. So the front tires are 124.46 centimeters. The rear track, however, is a little bit shorter, so it sticks in a little bit. It's 121.9 centimeters. So you take the difference of that, which is about 2.56 centimeters, and divide that by 2, because it's the entire track, and I'm only measuring half of that really, because I'm only doing one side of the car. So that tells me that the rear wheels are offset 1.28 centimeters from the front wheels. So if I want this string to be square, I have to account for that difference. So because the front sticks out a little bit further than the rear, I have to make up for that 1.28 centimeters or 12.8 millimeters at the back. The ultimate goal being is that these two sides, you can see I got the other one set up over there, these two sides are square to the car and square to each other. So the last check that I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the distance between the string here and the string over there, front and back, and they need to match. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get those set up. It doesn't really matter how far away you are from the two fronts and the two backs as long as they're equal, and then the two jack stand distances are equal when you're all done. Alright, so I picked an arbitrary number, essentially 34 millimeters. And I'm going to go from the center of the spindle, making sure that I don't touch on the cotter pin there. And then I'm just going to measure with the depth micrometer portion of this to the center of those two screws. Alright, so I've got 34 centimeters or 34 millimeters. I'm going to run over to the other side, do the other side real quick, and then get to the back. Two fronts are set at 34 millimeters, so 1.28 centimeters or 12.8 millimeters. It's going to put me at 36.8, so I'll go ahead and I'll set it at 36.8 now, or excuse me, 46.8 right now. Now I'm afraid to go, there is like a recess in here, and I'm afraid to go into that because I don't know how that is in relation to on both sides and how well those are machined or anything, but I am going to go off the face of the threaded portion there. And it actually already looks like I'm there. We're really close to it. Knock it out just a little bit. Alright, so that's pretty good right there at 46.76. Now I'm going to go back up to the front, double check 34. Alright, so 34 checks up front. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and then as the final check, we'll measure the distance between the strings on the jack stands themselves. Same process. Alright, so now you want to measure the distance between the two strings. They should be about the same. And I found, where I've knotted the string here, I found that it's good to place the tape measure close to that knot because it kind of gives you some resiliency there. You don't want to pull on the string too much because you don't want to affect your measurement. So the closer you get it to the knot, the harder it is to pull on it and impact your measurement. And though you can just eyeball it, you want to try to get the string or the measurement as parallel as you can. So I'm looking at about 55.5 inches. So we're going to go to the front, cross our fingers, and hope it's the same. Alright, so here unfortunately we're looking at about 56 56 and a 16th or so. So I got about a ½ inch somewhere that I've got different. And I just kicked that jack stand, so I messed that measurement all up. So that's not good. We'll have to play with that. Well, I've been playing with this for a while now, and I cannot get the measurements to make sense and line up. I mean, I could force it, obviously, but what good is that? So I'm not too sure what's going on. I obviously need to do a little bit more research. The other thing I found that scares me a little bit, and it's going to be really hard to show you, but if you kind of look here, you can see that the relationship between the fender flare and the top of the tire there. That's the driver's side. Come around the passenger side, top of the fender flare, you can see how much further in that tire is. Again, kind of hard to show you. I'm not even going to really be able to show you from outside. You can see, I thought I fixed my fender. You can see how crooked that guy is. I'll have to adjust that again. But the whole car seems to be set to the passenger side, the whole body, in relation to the frame. So that's not good, I don't think. I'm not sure that it matters all that much. I'm curious if anybody else has got a Spitfire or anything and has noticed that. I don't think that's what's affecting my measurements. I guess it could be, but I mean, all the bolt holes lined up on the frame and all that kind of stuff, and I doubt that the whole car is shifted. I mean, I'm talking front wheels are in the same way, so I didn't mix and match parts. Like I said, everything went back on, but that's concerning at a level. So epic fail on the whole alignment thing. Got to do more research, got to figure out what I'm doing, got to really see. So instead what I've done is I've started to wrinkle coat the ashtray there, so at least I'll get something done today. Got the ashtray done. You can see on the inside of there, well, maybe you can't because of the shadow, but it's bubbled on me, and I don't really care, but and got the lid done. So that's done now. I just got to come up with a slick way to repair the hinge, whether or not I'm going to use a real small, like a gunmetal screw or something like that, one of those real small screws probably, since I'm not going to really use it that much anyway. But yeah, so something's done today. Alright folks, thanks so much for watching. Leave a comment below, tell me what you think. Well, like I said, this is not an instructional video. Sometimes things just don't go the way you'd like them to go. So I don't know what's going on with the alignment of this thing. I got to figure that out. I don't know if the shifting of the car in relation to the body, whatever, future me. So hopefully we'll take care of it soon. Thanks for watching again. Have a good rest of your day. Cheers.